Do you hear it? The MEP trades are making their voices heard. It's time for them to help lead the way into the future. Welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast. I'm your host, Todd Wyant. This is the show where we empower you to transform industries by championing innovation. You're invited to join me on my mission to embrace and share the innovations transforming the AEC, MEP, and manufacturing industries. If you like our show and want to know more, check out our new website, bridgingthegappod.com. And please share with your friends and coworkers while leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We are filming from Las Vegas at Autodesk University. Today, I'm excited to welcome for the first time Ian Molloy, Senior Product Line Manager, MEP at Autodesk. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks for coming on. Can you start by kind of giving us a brief background of you?
Sure, yeah. So my background actually is in building science, mechanical engineering, and mathematics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I have been basically developing tools for the building industry for pretty much my whole life. I've come more from the design side, design and analysis. But yeah, in what I've done, I've sort of experienced this full gamut from design through build, even a lot in operate as well.
Nice.
Around maintenance, things like that, yeah.
So how did you get into the MEP side?
Well, again, because I'm from Ireland, I describe it as building science and mechanical engineering. It's the closest thing we have, but we call it building services. Steve Butler, who you interviewed recently, he knows what I mean.
Nice.
Everyone else out there
just different terminology.
Yeah, just different terminology. But yeah, it's mechanical systems in a building, and so that's sort of been a major area that I've focused on, and I don't know what I just got into it. I guess kind of what got me into is like my dad was an electrical engineer.
Okay.
And I said, the usual thing, like, yeah, but I don't want to do electrical. And I went into mechanical, and that's that side of things. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what kind of industry trends have you been noticing recently?
Oh wow. It's. The easy answer to that is a lot of what, like Andrew was talking about earlier on, automation, optimization.
Sure.
I think that those two words sum it up at a very highest level. People are looking for efficiency in their workflow, either automating an existing workflow or in doing it, improving the quality of that workflow, and then connecting other workflows to one another. And then the optimization side of things is just whether it's design or make, as we call it. People are looking for greater cost savings, both first costs, running costs, those kind of things. I mean, that's it. That's it. It's sort of like the business macro level that we're seeing cost is king.
Yeah.
From a technology perspective, the cloud. I guess I know it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but just in terms of, we've been talking about it for a long time, and I think everybody's, I'll say, experimented with it a bit. Not all I mean by that is that the stage that we're at with that is that, like with things like Forge, we're now talking about the cloud in a mature way. We've developed products and services in the cloud in the past, and they've worked. But when you get into really building, super reliable, super robust, super scalable cloud infrastructure, the bar is completely different, and build it and then maintain it. And I think Autodesk is making that transition. There's a lot of things happening with Forge that we ourselves are using, especially for MEP fabrication, and they just open up so many new things that that itself is the trend. I think is one way to look at it. BIM. Do I need to say that? It's kind of obvious.
Forgive me.
Yeah, but it all depends on where you're at in the industry, your level of maturity, and things like that. You know what I mean? Obviously, you can talk about things like AR and VR and all that kind of stuff, and I tend to shy away from that just because, it's cool and stuff like that. It's great, but I think when you think about your average engineer, what they're doing, and average contractor, is that really top of mind? I mean, there's definitely some value in it, and I don't dispute that, but I think people. There's still a lot of low-hanging fruit in just the basics, like producing drawings and producing models. That we can do that a lot better.
Gotcha. So with so much going on in the industry right now, what kind of gets you excited about the MEP trades?
I'll just sort of tell you. So I'm actually fairly new to the trades. My experience to that actually is through Autodesk when I kind of inherited the overall portfolio of MEP. Fabrication was included. So I said, right, I got to really learn about this. And like I said, I've worked with contractors loads.
Sure.
And but I've learned a lot more about the business of detailing fabrication. And the bit that honestly excites me the most is the estimation piece, because you know cost.
Right.
And when you talk about, again, you listen to what Andrew's talking about, a bit more, better, less, and these things. You know, if you can quantify cost and you can offer up alternative design solutions, you're really getting at the ultimate optimization there, right? I mean, how can you get better performance at less cost? You can't do that without knowing the cost.
Right.
And you know, that's something that designers would love to get their hands on, to understand that better, so we could really look at sort of whole system design. So when I look at it, where I really like us to be as an industry in I don't know, 5-10 years, long time, because it takes time to change.
Yeah.
I think about how the kind of information that our fabrication customers have with cost and the buildability aspects, and being able to connect that to design. And I don't necessarily mean in a sort of linear way, but of just, you know, you make the design model, you send it out to bid, and then you redo it all. I mean, really, in terms of short-circuiting that entire workflow and being able to design a building using fabrication information, I think that's really interesting. I think that will complete, in my opinion, and I know I'm probably biased, but I think more so than what I'll call architecture and structure, MEP has enormous opportunities for improved cost optimization and performance optimization. You know, there's a lot of over-design happening.
Sure.
You might be optimizing the fabrication, but if that system was the wrong system to begin with, you know, you're swimming against the tide, right?
Right. Sure.
So I think that to me is really the key thing that I think could really change the value, the contribution that we make to the industry and to customers, and, you know, winning projects. I think that's what's really interesting. You know, better performance at lower cost. If you can do that,
right,
you're going to clean up. Right?
Yeah, that's the golden ticket there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So what are the things that firms should kind of be thinking about over the next 3 to 5 years in order to get to that vision that you just cast out?
Yeah, you know, the thing I always grounded in is that, in fact, you know what I mean, walk before you run. You know, I mean, there's lots of new things. There's always more technology out there, right, that you can take advantage of, that's already there, that you're not taking advantage of, you know, before you even look at any new things, right? So
I'd always coming out.
I always say, make sure you're maximizing the investment that you've already made. Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's new things and the tools that you've got. But in terms of, you know, the trend towards newer things, you know, fabrication, you know, Revit 2018 and 19, which is still fairly new, and most people at a project level, you know, because people are generally 2-3 years behind. Okay. We're just starting to see customers now starting to get on to 18 and 19, which was really our come out years for the fabrication modeling in Revit.
Gotcha.
So if you haven't already checked that, I would say start looking at that. And I'd say the same actually to the designers out there as well, who watch, because that's something that, again, we see it time and time again. Design models that, you know, particularly challenging areas, spatial areas like, you know, a riser or a plant room or something like that, and it's not designed with any notion of how it'll actually fit. Right. It can't fit 6 ducts in that time. Right.
The reality doesn't come in.
and so there's examples that it can be leveraged that way.
Can you speak to what's the kind of the product roadmap that Autodesk has for MEP?
Yeah, sure. So broadly speaking, you know, we're kind of trying to do it all, but yet not, right? And what I mean by that is that we actually have to cover everything from design analysis, coordination, documentation, and detailing fabrication, which is a lot of ground, right? A lot of different people, it's ambitious. A lot of different personas and activities, a lot of data that is represented in different ways, and also fundamentally, you know, mechanical and electrical. That's ultimately, you know, we call it MEP, but really that's the way it breaks down, we're pretty balanced across the, you know, the way we're investing, but the starting sort of last year, we started making a major reinvestment back in electrical because we had neglected that for a while. And customers are pretty vocal about, you know, it should really do this. It's so stupid. It doesn't. Why can't you fix it?
Yeah.
And so we started to address a lot of them. So if you see in Revit 2020, you'll see a lot of new improvements. And we're keeping that momentum up with that.
Okay, great.
You know,
Nice.
you're going to see more soon around that. We're going to continue that. You know, electrical engineers are important,
Yeah.
just in case that's not already obvious.
Maybe the squash middle in that acronym, but
Yeah, exactly.
they're valuable.
And then on the other side, then you know, we've introduced some exciting new capabilities on the design analysis side, which I think I'm going to be very interested to see how this could be connected to the fabrication side, because what we've done is basically add the ability to do more systems analysis in Revit. So that's the piece where, you know, the engineer decides what system's actually going into the building. Is it VAV or is it fan coil? Is it, you know, one chiller or two? And that overall strategy ultimately influences, you know, everything in between, which is all the sheet metal and pipe work, right?
Sure.
So those two pieces are both your two elements of cost and also the two pieces that need to be optimized, right, in terms of sizing and selection and then distribution. And so that analysis piece now means that no longer has to be done in a kind of a third-party tool. It can now be done in Revit, and that information can go in there. So that's because it's a brand new feature, although we've been working on it a very long time, and we've used some open source components to do that, which have benefits in themselves. We'll continue to do that. But the way we built that, it's also open to being, it's got APIs and things like that, so people can build on it. So we're interested to see how we can start to connect some of the fabrication data where appropriate. You know, so for example, if you're dealing with a fan coil or an air handler, the existing normal Revit families are fine, but you're dealing with everything else in between. All the information on the ductwork insulation, for example, things like that all have big impact on cost and performance, things like that, which are really interesting to take account of. So again, we're going to continue to do more of that, and then you know, on the fabrication side, I'm happy to say we're actually starting to build more momentum up with that again, right? And so we are, you know, starting with the kind of the most obvious things. You know, we're building the future, and a lot of that relates to Forge. But we're also trying to make sure that, you know, you can be successful with the existing tools that you have. You know, CAD, CAM, and S aren't going anywhere, and you know, we know they're critical to everybody's business. And so we are looking to do more on maintaining investment in those. You know, we're not going to be, and I think everybody knows this, right? We're not going to be adding any major new features there, right? But we do want to make sure that they're stable and robust, and importantly to us as well, that they're built better, that we don't have regression failures and things like that which can slip in. And then the other areas then in terms of, we had a little bit of a hiatus with 2020 in terms of fabrication modeling. Continued like 18 and 19, lots of new stuff, and then there was nothing in 20. Again, you're not going to see much immediately soon. Remember, I have to be very careful about dates. I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
You can figure out what I'm saying. But then we're getting back to that again now. So, you know, you're going to see a lot more effort there, particularly again around the, you know, mostly where we know we can make the biggest impact quickly, which is in sheet metal and pipe work. We've got a long list of other things to do there, and we continue to listen to our customer council around that. You know, our customers are very passionate about these tools and tell us it's
a
great.
vocal group.
Yeah. Well, I understand. It's like, it's their business, right? And so it's a mission critical thing. So we continue to prioritize from that. So that's good. And then, you know, the longer term sort of strategy that we have that we've been working on for a long time will continue to, just because of everything that's evolved in it, is essentially moving all of the business logic of CAD, CAM, and EST into the cloud on Forge, making Forge services out of them.
Very cool.
And that one's often one of those things that people say, well, isn't that like Box just putting stuff in the cloud, like the data in the cloud? And it's like, well, no. That's just if you put a file in the cloud. It's actually making the actual intelligence of those objects available as a service, a microservice.
Oh, wow.
So what that means is that, you know what I mean, you can build things on top of that, and you're not relying on that. So first and foremost, we're doing that so that you can consume that content in Revit, but partners like yourselves can build on that as well and utilize that. You guys have been heavily involved in that. And then if you notice, I'm going through this in kind of workflow order, right from design through to making the other piece then as well that we'll continue to work on is that you guys have been involved with is the opening up of our post-processor code so that you guys can service our customers who need, you know, drivers for new machines and things like that, which are, you know, continuing to do that. You know, back with the MEP days, we used to be able to respond to that pretty regular, but you know, we're not tooled up to do that yet. We still know that customers need to be able to do that. So we're really happy that you guys have been first to or should I say evolve.
Yeah,
and it's just great to see that happen. And like, overall, there's a lot of momentum building. Like I said, we sort of had a slow down certain areas, but that's just the ebb and flow of large organization pivoting and moving things. Get shifted around and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's good to see progress on all fronts. And like always, if anyone wants to know more, there's the Revit Roadmap, autodesk.com/Revit Roadmap.
Okay.
It's right there.
Yeah, nice.
We try to explain everything that's happening. And then, of course, we got Idea Station. Feel free to vent all your anger there, and also let us know what's working. But then also the beta forum as well. If you really want to get the inside track on what we're actually developing and you'd like to even provide some input on it, get a part of the Revit preview. Okay. And you can even be part of the our every 2 week sprint reviews where we're showing the increments that we make, getting the feedback, and we can adapt very quickly. It's a very successful way to develop. So
nice. That's great being able to have that visibility into that for sure.
Exactly. And you guys follow the similar process, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So Revit 2020.1 just rolled out the new kind of integrated analysis functionality. Right. Can you kind of unpack kind of the need for that and the usefulness of what all that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there's different ways. So I mean, that really is kind of like where it all starts, right? I mean, if you think about it, even before the architect starts to figure out, I want a curvy, swoopy building or whatever. I'm not an architect, so it's either a box or something. I don't understand, right?
The curvy, swoopy, I think, is the very scientific term.
But the point is, mechanical system. When you think about the chicken and egg analogy, right? Mechanical system is the chicken, right? The egg you can't figure out a system until you know what building it's got to serve.
Sure.
And so systems analysis is about that very first piece. It's about, here's a piece of architecture. What's it going to take to service it? What are the loads? How much equipment do I need? And depending on your knowledge, I mean, that can sound like a really simple question, but it's not, because and this is the thing, like and I'm going to generalize here, but like in other areas like construction, is steel or timber or concrete, and there's different strategies for making things stand up, but there's really no incentive to add any more steel into a building than you need, right? But concrete, it actually works against you in seismic situations, right? But in mechanical systems, there's a huge incentive to increase the performance of mechanical systems. You can go from code to super high performance, near to net zero. A passive house, right? For example, like, you know what I mean? It's still, doesn't need any heating, but it has a mechanical system in it because it's, heat recovery and things like that. And so that systems analysis is really about those upfront early decisions, which, greatly impact the overall value to the owner and the performance of the building, its environmental footprint in terms of energy, quality of comfort and things like that. But then critically, it provides the information that ultimately is what's fed downstream in terms of what gets modeled, what goes out to bid, what gets value engineered, and then ultimately what gets fabricated, right? So our reason for doing this is not only to serve the ability for people to do that analysis using the Revit data model, but also to be able to provide the downstream information to coordination modeling, documentation in your standard kind of like design bid situation, through to more, the things I'm more interested in is around when you start looking at more integrated design build, where you're not necessarily, you don't care about a pretty sheet, right? What you care about is the underlying kind of logic and the quality of the design, right? And so that's really what we're kind of interested to do, is what's the minimum we could do. It sounds counterintuitive, right? Because Revit is all about detail, particularly with fabrication. You're going into more detail. Right. That's the sort of classic innovator's dilemma, if you think about that. From no matter what modeler you start, people are going to push you into a higher level of detail, which is valid. But when we talk about actually, anyone again will know this, but organizing the Revit data model, I mean, Revit actually doesn't know what a system is, right? It's like, unless you tell it, unless you say, connect all these things and put all these parameters, and now it will behave the way I want it to. But, a fan coil system or a VAV system or chill beams or something like that, there's parts to that with logic that exist and should be captured. And so that's what we've added. Okay. It's basically the ability to do that. And so, there's a number of drivers. It's currently, it's, I won't call it the Wild West, but I mean, there's anything from hand calcs to spreadsheets to third-party tools. They're really not leveraging the building information model. They might be taking some geometry out of it, but they'll do it once and they'll do it at a late stage, right? We're trying to allow them to do that at a much earlier stage.
Gotcha.
And actually the thing that I think, and I gave a class on it this morning, so part of one of my challenges was the contractors say, hey, check this out and use it to challenge your engineers. I mean, to sort of like, you're going to do a little bit of redesign anyway.
Right.
But it's not that heavy lifting, and there's a lot of kind of depending. Like I said, some engineers will absolutely oversize systems. I mean, when you're talking about value engineering, there's huge opportunities for downsizing the primary equipment, actually upsizing the distribution, right? Even though that's completely counterintuitive to the economics from a performance perspective, and it makes a lot more sense.
Interesting.
So so that's why we're trying to there's analysis needs there that need to be met, but it's also, we don't just want to create a faster horse. We want to provide something that actually gets you to a much better design. That's why we did that.
Very cool. So kind of give me your take on prefabrication, and then how do firms know how aggressive to really push the gas down on prefab?
You know what, I gotta say, I don't think I know enough to say that, because that's such a huge question, right? I think that's something that it's a trend that people are sort of obviously very interested in paying to, but it's not like sort of you can just go out and do it all tomorrow. You know what I mean? I think it's something that naturally evolves, and I think the only way it's going to happen is your business needs to take those risks and needs to try new things. And I think certain markets might lend themselves to it more than others. And certain pieces of the system, like I don't know, domestic hot water, for example, might lend itself better than let's say cooling, right? Ventilation, something like that. I don't know, just saying there's pieces of it. And I think the learnings from that can then start to be moved forward. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I'm just sort of saying it's not,
maybe it's like pick a part of the project,
right?
Get good at that, exactly. And then move on to something else. And eat the whole horse.
Yeah, exactly. That's thank you. That's sort of my what I'm sort of getting. I think people are thinking I have to eat a whole horse, or if I'm not, I'm losing out.
Yeah.
And so, and again, it just depends. We're seeing different degrees of sophistication of things that people are doing, but it's happening just regardless, right? I mean, it's the natural place. When I talked earlier on about finding efficiencies, both in workflow automation and optimization, well, it all leads there,
right? Sure.
How long that's going to take for everybody in all the different
it's a great
segments,
unknown question.
it's just impossible to really say. You know what I mean? And I've been involved in the construction industry too long to sort of say things like, oh, that we could do that in 5 years. From a technology perspective, do it in 5 years, but how long will it take the industry to change is another thing.
It's a whole mental shit.
Yeah. So that's a super loaded question. It's really hard to say. And what I again, a lot of people come to us and sort of say, well, they sort of expect, and we can provide a certain amount of guidance on, you can try these things and stuff like that. But a big part of it is that, we see this all the time. If we were to tell everybody how to do things, everyone would only do it one way.
Sure.
And it probably wouldn't be a good way, right? Because we're not the experts in these areas, and we're always amazed at the things that people do with our tools. We never thought of that, or you did that, and wow, if you only did this, it would open up these doors. And so I'm very interested to see, we learn from the leaders in the industry that are doing things, and interested to see what areas might lend themselves to acceleration of that more than others. But to me, I don't know, there isn't anything that's vastly ahead, or any one that's vastly ahead of anyone else that is the magic key. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. So back at Applied Software's MEP Force event in August, one of the themes that kept coming up was how it's time for the MEP trades to have a bigger voice earlier in the BIM process. What are your thoughts on how to accomplish this? Yeah,
so again, I'll lean a little bit more on where my experience comes in, and I don't know. But for example, like in my past, I've done a lot of lead projects. One of the things it calls for is enhanced commissioning. And in other words, get somebody who knows what it takes to actually build a system and maintain a system involved early on in the process. And that's I'd say that's even before the BIM process, right?
Interesting.
So and the challenge with that has always been is there's always a what they call it, like an optional credit. It's not a prerequisite, right? So there's basic commissioning. That doesn't really call for this. The two of them together, though, however, broadly that thing is really about saying, hey, you could have the highest performing design in the world, but you can very easily build it really badly. You can operate it really badly. So getting somebody who understands the reality systems, who can advise on, again, value. I understand the cost of these things. You know what I mean? There's often with pushing the envelope for high performance from an energy and comfort perspective, you end up with a lot of complexity. And could end up being completely either unbuildable or very expensive to build and things like that. So to me, having somebody in the room who knows the reality of how things are built, how they really work. And that's not to say engineers don't, but they understand it at a sort of theory level, right?
Sure.
That's maybe being unfair to engineers, but you know what I mean? There's two very different levels of detail.
Well, they're looking at very different things.
Right, exactly. So I think that to me is like a kind of the industry already recognized that years ago. I mean, that lead at the end is trying to move the industry forward. That's its goal, right? And they recognized that that's a critical ingredient of that. And I would say that's even pre-BIM, right? Ideally, you want to do that from day one. And then once you get into things from there, I think the ability for our fabrication customers to be able to advise designers on the buildability of things. And this is partially why what we're doing with the fabrication data manager, for example. So you have this great rich data set of your content and the dimensions of things. It also includes your cost information. You don't necessarily want to share that. And so this is part of what we're trying to do, is allow to share the geometry, but not the cost information. And that would allow a designer then to work with some real parts rather than just the sort of generic design stuff. I think that's you're going to see more of that, and I think the more if we can get more case studies around the benefits of it, which can be quantified, it would help drive that forward.
Yeah, so kind of similar. How do you encourage the owners to really reach out to the trades to get their input earlier? What are the benefits to the owner?
I mean, it's funny because, coming from the design side, you could almost argue the same thing. Like, what does it take an owner to reach out to the design side? I mean, as always, the owner is the one that's why we all exist. That's, the ultimate value lies there. I think, it goes back to cost. It's like, even the best customers in the world who want the highest performance, greenest buildings, things like that, they still care about what it costs, right?
Everybody has to care about the bottom line.
And like you'll see the odd green sort of albatross building that's like, but super expensive. It's just not practical or scalable. What's that really solving? You know what I mean? It's not doing anything. But I think the fact that you understand the buildability and the reality cost of things infinitely more than the designers do, I think is the main draw, right?
Sure.
I think also as well that, a lot of our customers obviously have operations side of the business as well. The idea of digital twin, I should have mentioned that one in the trends. There's just too many to mention. Right. But that one is just, we've been hearing about that for years, but the volume of that is going up. And I think that, again, there's different ways you can interpret that and what that can be. But I think that's where the contractors in particular can have a big role, because all that information happens and gathered during commissioning. And having a way to, gather it, store it, hand it over, I think is really important. And I think they're seeing more and more value in the model as an asset, as opposed to just a means to an end for a design. And so whoever can provide the most valuable data, so to speak, the most valuable model, the most well-organized model, one that doesn't just sit on a shelf type thing, gather dust. I think that's kind of a key differentiator for people.
Gotcha.
And then using it in terms of operations and things like measurement and verification and stuff like that.
Yeah, interesting. So with so many new technologies coming online and different workflows coming up all the time, how do you stay up on, what to use, what workflows, and all the trends?
Oh yeah, I think the keyword is try to stay up. Well, the main thing is I don't know, I'd say, I've never really calculated this, but at least 50% of my time, Martin Schmidt's time, right? We're 2 PMs for MEP, is talking to customers on, what's working, what's not working, both on your day-to-day bread and butter stuff, along with your kind of like your skunk works special thing that you've done with Dynamo that's solving this one problem. You try to learn all these things through to bigger things. And so, yeah, so customer contact is the main thing. Obviously, we can only talk to so many people. So then, everything we try to do through things like Idea Station, and we have like our different customer council meetings and things like that. That's enough just to try to keep up with, if you know what I mean. Never mind trying to do anything sort of proactive. But then beyond that, just like everybody else, just read the news and all the journals and things like that. And so, it's also interesting, I think, that I think it's where one of the really nice things about Autodesk is that you do get exposed to people and companies and things that are not necessarily directly related, but then still can have a lot of value, in terms of broader. That's a similar problem. You know what I mean? As I say that, I'm actually drawing a blank right now, but there's been several recently that that industry has the exact same problem. It just looks different, right. and sure. So you can sort of learn about that. And you see what they're doing to solve those things. So yeah, I mean, it's a challenge as always, and I don't ever pretend to, we'll say our job is be responsible for the strategy and things like that, but we don't pretend to know it all. I mean, this is the plan, and the plan is the plan until the plan changes, and that will change based on somebody saying that's wrong. Have you thought about this or whatever? So. It's an ongoing challenge to do that. And we got teams, but customers. Honestly, if we didn't talk to customers, we would be completely in the dark. Which would not be good.
That's right. Feedback is important for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to
no problem.
Join us on the
podcast.
For having me.
Yeah,
anytime. Absolutely. And thank you guys for tuning in. To the Bridging the Gap podcast. If you want to know any more about anything that we talked about, you can feel free to reach out to Applied Software at ASDI.com and let them know that the podcast sent you. Until next time, I'm Todd Wyant, thanking you for joining us on the Bridging the Gap podcast. Keep innovating.